Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. To start, let me give some background on my family. Growing up, it was always just me, my dad, and his parents. My mom was a part of our lives when I was very young, but everything changed when I was about 7. My parents had been together for over a decade, and from what I remember, my dad adored my mom. He treated her like a queen, always doing little things to make her happy, and he was fully committed to our family. I thought we had a happy, stable home, but that illusion shattered when my mom's affair came to light. I was too young to understand everything back then, but I know now that my mom had been seeing someone else, her now husband. She eventually became pregnant with his child and decided to leave my dad for him. My dad was heartbroken. I remember him spending nights on the couch, staring at the floor, barely speaking. He was devastated, and he never truly recovered from it. He tried to put on a brave face for me, but I could see the pain he carried. He loved my mom deeply, and the betrayal tore him apart. After she left, my mom moved in with her affair partner and had 2 more kids, my half-brother and half-sister. I never really had a relationship with them, and honestly, I never felt the desire to. They were born out of the affair that broke my father. For years, my mom tried to stay in my life, but I kept my distance. I stayed with my dad and my grandparents, who were my rock throughout everything. They were supportive, loving, and did everything they could to make sure I was okay. I grew up with their guidance, and they helped me become the person I am today. My dad, though, struggled to move on. He tried dating a few times, but he never fully recovered from what my mom did to him. He was a wonderful father and gave me all the love he could, but I could always tell he was carrying a heavy sadness. A few years after my mom left, he passed away. It was sudden, and it broke me. I felt like I'd lost everything. I buried myself in studies, trying to fill the void left by his absence. My grandparents were there for me, just like they always had been, but it was never the same without my dad. I lost my closest person. As the years went on, I grew closer to my grandparents. They were wonderful people who built a successful business from the ground up. They'd been running the business for decades, and it had grown into a multi-million-dollar empire. They instilled in me a strong work ethic and taught me everything they knew. They even hinted that one day I would take over. I dedicated myself to learning about the business and helping them in any way I could. Then, last year, my grandparents passed away within a few months of each other. It was devastating, losing them both in such a short time. They had been my family, my support, and my teachers. Their absence left a huge hole in my life, but I knew I had to honor their legacy and carry on the business they'd worked so hard to build. When their will was read, it turned out they had left everything to me. The entire business, all their assets, everything. They had trusted me to carry on the family legacy, and I was determined not to let them down. The business is substantial, worth millions, and it's something I'm incredibly proud of. I poured my heart into it, just like my grandparents had, and I've been working tirelessly to keep it thriving. It feels like their final gift to me, and I'm deeply honored to carry on what they built. A few months ago, my mother reached out to me for the first time in years. She hadn't been a major presence in my life since she left with her new family, only popping up here and there. She had always tried to maintain some connection, but after my dad's passing, I kept her at arm's length. Her reaching out now, after years of silence, caught me off guard. At first, she acted all warm and friendly, asking how I was and saying she wanted to reconnect. But soon enough, the real reason for her sudden interest became clear. She brought up the family business, saying she knew how successful it had become and how it was worth millions. She started dropping hints that my half-brother and half-sister deserved a share because they were family. She told me that since my grandparents were their step-grandparents, it was only fair that they benefit from the family's wealth as well. I was stunned. My mother, the woman who had left my father and shattered our family, was now asking me to share my grandparents' business with her other children, the children she had with the man she left my father for. I couldn't believe her audacity. I reminded her that my grandparents had left the business to me because they trusted me to carry on their legacy. They barely knew my half-siblings, who hadn't been a part of their lives, and certainly hadn't been there for them the way I had. My mother wouldn't back down. She started guilt-tripping me, saying I was being selfish and spiteful, that my half-siblings were innocent and deserved a chance to benefit from the family's success. She even tried to frame it as a family unity thing, saying that this would bring us all closer together. But I knew better. This wasn't about family. It was about money. She saw an opportunity for her other children to gain wealth, and she was willing to rewrite history to get it. At one point, she even tried to argue that my father would have wanted me to share the business with them. That's when I lost it. I laughed in her face and told her exactly what I thought. I reminded her that she had left my father heartbroken, that she was the reason he spent his final year struggling to recover from the pain she caused. I told her that my father would never have wanted me to share anything with the family that resulted from her betrayal, especially her affair child. My mom went quiet after that. She seemed taken aback, as if she hadn't expected me to stand up for myself. But then she got angry, accusing me of being bitter and holding on to old grudges. She said I was punishing my siblings for her mistakes and that I was being unfair to them. She kept insisting that I needed to let go of the past and do the right thing for my siblings. I told her that my loyalty was to my grandparents, my father, and the family that had supported me throughout everything. Her children were not my responsibility. Since then, I've been getting calls and messages from her, as well as some other relatives who think I'm being too harsh. They argue that I'm refusing to acknowledge my half-siblings and that I'm letting old resentments cloud my judgment. They say that family should come first and that I'm being petty by not sharing the business. But to me, this isn't about being petty. It's about respecting the legacy my grandparents left behind and honoring the family that stood by me. The truth is, I don't see my half-siblings as part of my family. I have nothing against them personally, but they're strangers to me. They didn't grow up with my grandparents, didn't know my father, and certainly weren't around when I was building my life alongside the family that actually raised me. My grandparents left the business to me because they believed in me, and I want to respect their wishes. I don't think it's my responsibility to hand over a share of the business to people who played no part in our family's journey. But the guilt-tripping from my mom and some relatives is starting to wear on me. Part of me wonders if I'm being too harsh by refusing to share, especially considering my half-siblings are innocent in all of this. They didn't ask to be born into this situation, and they probably don't even fully understand the history. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I also feel strongly about protecting my family's legacy. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for refusing to share the business my grandparents left me with my half-siblings, even though my mother thinks I'm being unfair? OP's mother abandoned OP's family and broke OP's father's heart, and now she's trying to swoop in and get something out of what's left of his family's legacy. OP's grandparents made their wishes clear, and OP is right to honor them. The audacity of OP's mother to demand the affair kids get something from the man she cheated on and broke his heart and family. She is delusional. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. Your mother's sense of entitlement is unbelievable. She left your father and has the audacity to demand a share of your family's business for the kids she had with her affair partner? You're absolutely justified in refusing. This isn't about family. It's about her wanting money for her other children, plain and simple. Not the a-hole. Your half-siblings may be innocent, but they're not entitled to your family's business. You're honoring the people who raised and supported you, and you have no obligation to share with people who weren't part of your life. Your mother and anyone else trying to guilt-trip you are just being selfish. Not the a-hole. Your mom made her choices, and so did your grandparents when they left everything to you. They trusted you to carry on their legacy, not her children. Your loyalty to your father and grandparents is completely understandable. Don't let anyone convince you that you're wrong for honoring their wishes. My brother, 51 male. His mistress, 47 female. Niece, 1 year. Backstory: my brother had an affair on his wife. They have 5 kids. After quitting his job and they moved in with his in-laws, my brother's mistress got pregnant. She decided to quit her job. She was evicted from her previous rental, leaving my niece homeless. My brother's wife decided to try and work things out. I ended up having a lot of family pressure to allow my brother's mistress and my niece to move into my rental to try and create a stable environment for my niece. Eventually, I agree to allow them to move in with a couple of conditions. 1. Pay $500 each month. Most of it goes to the cost of the utilities. 2. No dogs. The mistress quickly agreed, since the rent is extremely cheap, and let us know she will be starting her new job soon. The first month, I received half the rent. The last 5 months, nothing at all. It's become a burden for me to keep them there. I am working additional hours to cover the expenses. My brother's mistress never went to work. I have tried and tried to talk to them, trying to work things out. It's going nowhere. I gave his mistress a 30-day notice to move. During that time, I found out she is pregnant with baby number 2. My brother's wife kicked him out, and he moved into the rental with his mistress. They didn't leave after the 30 days. They ignored my attempts to talk to them, so I served a 5-day notice. Still, no reply. So I went to the court and filed an eviction. Since they were served, my phone is not stopped. Just about every family member is called upset. My dad told me to finish it. He feels like my brother needs to man up and take care of his kids, both from his wife and mistress. My dad told me to put my kids first. My mom, however, is livid. She told me that I would be responsible if my niece and the new baby will be taken away by CPS. She said my kids are old enough to understand mommy working extra hours in the name of supporting family. She feels like I should continue working overtime and paying for their expenses until the new baby arrives in 7 months. Am I the a-hole for kicking my brother's pregnant mistress to the curb? Update. To answer a couple of questions. Yes, she is pregnant. I was there at the ER when the doctor told her. I also found out she wasn't using any birth control. As of right now, the court date is Monday morning. I should find out there if the judge will allow additional time for them to stay. In most cases, it's 72 hours. Unless I drop it or allow more time. Last, my husband and I have talked about taking the babies into our home. Just them. It's a major change for our kids. We feel like it's something we need more time to decide. Update number 2. My mom showed up to my house tonight. It's quite the drive. She has been crying. I invited her in to have dinner with me and my kids. After my kids left with my husband trick-or-treating, she tried again to allow my brother to stay. She said with their health, they couldn't allow them to stay in their home. I told her that I feel like I am enabling my brother to not take responsibility for all his children. I told her I am tired of working non-stop for someone who is more than capable of working. She left sad. I will see my brother for the first time since he was served tomorrow at court. It will be interesting for sure. I'm a little heartbroken, but it needs to happen. My hope is the judge doesn't extend the time they have in my rental. I feel like it will just make things harder. Update. Okay, so I went to court today. My brother and his mistress didn't show up. The judge did a good job. She ruled in my favor. My brother has to be out by Saturday. If he is not, the constable can remove him and his mistress on Monday morning once the courts open up. Everything was going good until my husband asked the judge if we are responsible to notify my brother of the ruling since he is not there. The judge said we could pay for the constable to deliver a copy of the ruling today. I gave the constable all the info, including when both my brother and mistress would be home. After I left the courts, I got a call from my parents, both on the line. I told my mom the constable will deliver the court's ruling to my brother to give them the maximum time to prepare to move. My mom was dead silent. My dad bursts into laughter. I was then informed the reason my brother and his mistress did not come to court was they had outstanding warrants I knew nothing about. So there is a good chance they will be arrested today. I can't enter the rental until next Monday. I will update then, if I am present when they go to remove my brother and his mistress. I was told today if they are not gone, they will have 15 minutes to gather whatever before they are removed by the police. Not the a-hole. If your mom wants them to mooch off of someone, then she can start being the one to pay their expenses. It's absolutely wrong for your brother and mother to tell you to sacrifice time with your family for the sake of people taking advantage of family. Not the a-hole. Your brother can support himself, mistress, and all of his kids. If your mom is crying family, tell her to support them. Protect yourself and your family. Best of luck. Not the a-hole. Your mom can pay their expenses if she's so concerned about your brother and his poor, suffering mistress. You're a woman, you have children, and you're a mom. Your brother and mistress expect you to work to support them? Nah. Find out if you can file an emergency motion for a 24-hour eviction process and get the sheriff's office on board. Wife, 34 female, and I, 36 female, Have been together 11 years, married for 6. A few years into our relationship, my father-in-law and we came to the conclusion that it would be better all around if we moved into his house when he moved in with his new girlfriend. We decided that we would like to buy the house and he was up for it. But we couldn't get a mortgage, so we came to an unofficial agreement that we would cover the mortgage each month and save up for a larger deposit to pay him, and continue to cover the mortgage for the next 15 years until it was paid off, and the deeds would transfer to us. We moved on and replaced carpets, replaced the roof, installed a brand new bathroom, retiled the kitchen, put a new lawn out the back, and replaced some blown windows as well as other general upkeep that a homeowner is supposed to do. While we lived at the house, we never asked father-in-law to fix anything. We even fixed mold when we moved in. In all, we invested over £5,000 into the house. We were settled, had 2 dogs and a cat, and had just had a baby when he texted my wife out of the blue one day to tell us that rent was coming up because he had more expenses, and it wasn't up for discussion. The mortgage payments hadn't changed. He was increasing what we pay due to him needing more to meet his cost of living. We knew this wasn't fair. Our son was a few weeks old. We had nothing spare from our income, but we bid it for a few months. Then my contract at work ended. We decided to move our little family back to my home country, and this took months and a lot of expense. Then father-in-law demanded we put the house back to how he left it, and I nearly ripped the roof off the house. He wanted holes filled in where we had put pictures on the walls and hung the TV. We parted on bad terms because he refused to acknowledge the money we put into the house or pay us any back, and we had to accept it because we had nothing in writing. It really hurt my wife and I. A few months after we moved out, I got an alert to say a house in my area was for sale. It was our house. He put it up for sale and advertised a new roof and new bathroom. It sold a few weeks later, and I'm sure the money would have allowed him to make even a token gesture, but we heard nothing. Fast forward 4.5 years later, and we are home for a holiday. Wife wants to meet with her dad and wants me to go with our 3 kids. I said no for the following reasons. He pulled a massive jerk move on us when we were in no position to argue, and he knew this and used it. He has never offered any apology or any money back. He hasn't contacted me at all and barely bothered with his grandkids for a few years. But my wife kept pushing, and the relationship is recovered well enough that they are going for a meal. I declined to join them, and my wife has accused me of not caring about her feelings at all. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. He massively screwed your family over and kept you from meeting your goals. He was greedy and crappy and used his status as a family member to cash in. I would be so upset if my spouse expected me to just go to dinner as if none of this happened. He didn't just screw the wife over. He screwed them both over. If the wife wants to see her dad, then fine, go. But to expect OP to, and has the gall to talk about her feelings. What about OP's feelings? Sounds like the wife wants OP there as a cushion since she hasn't seen her dad in a while, and it might be awkward, which is understandable, but she has to respect OP's decision to decline. I'd never demand my spouse do this for me. Wow, not the a-hole. Does your wife care about your feelings as well? I totally get why you don't want to see this man anymore. After all, he's been such an a-hole to both of you. I don't see why you would owe him a visit just because he wants to. But this dinner could be a good reason for him to apologize. Maybe give it a try, one last time. In the end, it's on you to decide, but you are not the a-hole for not wanting to see this man again. And I don't see how sacrificing your own hurtful feelings is not caring about your wife's feelings. I really can't figure out what was your wife's argument here. My wife, 38 female, and my sister, 21 female, were pregnant and gave birth around the same time. My wife gave birth in late September, and my sister gave birth on the 2nd of October. We live in Florida, and despite my sister giving birth later, when we saw her during the holiday season, she was already back in her bikini and wearing her usual style of bra-length tops and ripped skinny jeans and looked flawless. She's an influencer, and her followers have begun commenting the hourglass emoji under her content again. My wife has expressed envy at my sister when we'd go out in public, and people would be vocal about how surprised they were that my sister was her son's mother and not a big sister in high school. My wife works out all the time, going on runs every morning before work and going to the gym during the weekend. Recently in therapy, she said she can feel me being so uninterested in her since our daughter was born, and says she desperately tries to get facials and works out to try to keep my attention. I felt bad that my wife seemed to be exercising so much, but the scale never seemed to budge, and she was left agonizing over the fact that she had the beginning of the stereotypical gaunt runner's face. So I asked my sister what her secret was to being so fit, because I knew she didn't like to work out much, because she fears gaining muscle that would make her look unfeminine, about as much as someone would fear dying. We went over to my sister and her husband's home for Christmas, and she showed us the contents of her fridge, which was mostly fruits and vegetables, and didn't have stuff like pasta or bread in it, which I noticed that my wife continuously was eating, along with chocolate-covered pretzels she compulsively munches on. So I offered to get the groceries the other day with no junk food. However, a few hours later, I come home from a run and I see the unhealthy crap my wife likes back in the pantry and fridge. Some of the bread already eaten. My wife herself said that if she could adopt whatever my sister does and see it works, she'd do anything to look like my sister. So in an attempt to be a problem solver, I tossed the new junk, including stuff for pasta, bread, ice cream, out. When my wife came back inside, I was making lunch, and she scrunched her nose up at the soup I was making and went to the pantry before I could stop her. She got furious when she saw that I had tossed out her food, and I said that she wanted to look like my sister, so I was trying to help make that happen. I said she didn't need any of the so-called comfort food, and she started screaming that it's all gone from breastfeeding, and that she couldn't believe I was comparing her negatively to my sister. She said my sister was a stay-at-home mom with a husband who pays for her personal trainer and somebody to cook their food for them, and started crying that she's lost me since our daughter arrived. Am I the a-hole for trying to solve my wife's body problem in a productive way? Yes, the a-hole. Here's your sister's secret. She's 21, and your wife is almost 40. I could eat 24/7 at 21 and not gain an ounce. God, you're an a-hole. Yes, the a-hole for so many things here. Yes, the a-hole for throwing out her food without discussing it with her. Yes, the a-hole for not understanding that a 21-year-old and a 38-year-old are going to react totally different to a pregnancy. There is no medical way a 38-year-old is going to bounce back like a 20-year-old. Yes, the a-hole for being so obsessed it is hurting your wife. Yes, the a-hole for so many reasons. But comparing the postpartum journey of a 38-year-old to a 21-year-old who has a trainer and chef is top of my list. It's also only been 3 months. Jesus, the pressure women are put under is ridiculous enough without a spouse contributing to it. My Uncle Chris is a great guy, and our families have always been tight. But I am planning a wedding, and he is driving me batcrap insane. Chris hates my future mother-in-law because he worked his whole life at the same company waiting to get into a certain position, and they decided to hire externally. Mother-in-law got the job, but it was hard on Chris because mother-in-law typed her resume on her phone and clearly didn't proofread it. It looked like a high school kid wrote it, and she refused to interview. He is put off by some of her other behavior, but mainly that resume because it was a joke, and he waited his whole life for that position. Every time they are in the same room due to pre-wedding festivities, he has to take some dig at her. He said she was too old for the color she was wearing. A color? He told my mom not to let her talk to my dad because she will duck anyone. He randomly threw a shirt at her when she was wearing a bikini and called her attention-seeking. It was a pool party, and she was not the only one in a bikini. He wanted to invite her boyfriend to the bachelor party and buy him a hooker. He made fun of her for not being married, then told her boyfriend not to marry her because if he had a church wedding, the stained glass would shatter. Mother-in-law actually thinks this is funny, but it is stressing me out. Also, mother-in-law's boyfriend loves to play white knight and defend her. Mainly, he just loves to hear himself talk. I find him pompous and unbearable, but holy hell, does this man have a good argument. He recently sat Chris down and said the comments need to stop. I don't want a shred of drama at my wedding. I don't want to listen to mother-in-law's windbag of a boyfriend, and I don't want mother-in-law having ammo to trash me to her family that I let this happen. Chris said he was just having fun and blowing off steam. Then he began to get emotional and said how much it hurts him and how demeaning it is working under her. I might be an a-hole because I said it is my wedding month and I just don't care about his feelings, and if he ruins this with any drama, I won't forgive him. He apologized, but my cousins later called me and blew up on me about how I was selfish and callous. I feel I might have been a bit of an a-hole because I know how much he wanted that job. I know how much mother-in-law sucks with her attitude and crappy resume, and I can't even imagine how she must act at work. I just have a very strong aversion to drama and don't want to listen to mother-in-law's obnoxious boyfriend. Not the a-hole. Your uncle is directing his anger at the wrong person. Instead of being mad at your future mother-in-law, he should be mad at the company for which they work. Don't hate the player, hate the game. The fact that you're more concerned about having to listen to your mother-in-law's boyfriend defend her, rather than the misogynistic attitude constantly coming out of your great guy uncle's mouth, says an awful lot about you. Everyone sucks here. Well, just you and your uncle, really. Chris is not a great guy. What the duck? He's a vile misogynistic pig. And shame on you for not calling his BS out. Honestly, he's acting so poorly I don't feel sorry for him at all. Not even about the job. And it's no wonder mother-in-law's boyfriend defends her. No one else will, apparently. The way you speak about the guy drips with condescension. And you find him pompous. Look in the mirror. Also, you do not get a wedding month. You come across as so self-centered throughout the whole post. Everyone sucks here.